The Idiot's March Prologue. The Jester's Dream. With soft steps through dense brush and over browned nettle, her slippered feet whispered through the woods. She sought the unknown, clutching hands with her eternal friends, shadow and silence. Sweet whispers spilled out over the muffled air, crisp to the wanting ear, muddled to the blurred mind. So deep within the primordial wild, no uttered voice would bloom from mortal tongues. Be it the wicked words of demons or the golden promises of the fair folk, danger watched intently from the treetops, and the world grew silent before its baleful countenance. Only with well-earned experience did she keep the twigs and stones from biting through the soft soles of her slippers. Motley attire and silken slippers proved poor protection from the savage wild. But Fay Wood and the cold embrace of night were better than the raucous boorish bastards with false ideas of deserved permissions and hands that ever wandered unpermitted. It was her lot in life to entertain, however what they desired was not warranted nor wanted by her. Certainly she enjoyed the company of the rougher sex, at least out here beyond the night. But she demanded at least some courtship and care. She was a fool, but she was no one's toy. The thicket grew thicker. Slow twists of thorned bramble funneled her movements in directions down unchosen paths. Yet as a willing servant to the whims of universal discord, she acquiesced that any direction was better than none, except perhaps the direction from which she came. Thus ever forward, a spinning compass was that night's master. With apprehension she found the world fading about her. The canopy of leaves that blanketed the night sky let no soft starlight through. Deeper she went and louder the whispers grew, lyrical poetry flowing with deeply intoxicating rhythms, carved for untold aeons in tongues never known to man. They did not know she was there, traversing the dark. The impossible chorus continued, infecting her with poisonous curiosity and drawing her in. Fear clawed its way through her veins. The sounds were alien to her. Woefully ill-equipped for defense, she was unsure how to proceed. Surely fairies and demons lay only in poetry and cautionary tales. She remembered, nestled in the memories of childhood, lithe and thimble-thick bodies with slender hips and flittering moth wings. They were sparks of enjoyment, yet unfathomably cruel. Staggeringly beautiful, yet uncomfortably nude, exposing parts she hadn't yet witnessed, parts she was scolded for attempting to see. They were wonderful playmates for the young and lonely girl that she was, but they were just imaginary, phantoms. This was a long and unshakable theory. Alas, here she was in the gloomy womb of nowhere, at the darkest hour, bewitched by unholy voices. She came upon a natural gateway, living green life interlaced and twisted in a way far too organized to have grown free, yet too chaotic for the hands of a simple mortal. Dangerous curiosity held her in thrall, pulling her by her small beating heart further into the unknown. The bells about her head jangled softly as her cap bumped the branches around her. The mechanical sound made her grit her teeth. It was painfully unnatural in the forest gloom. Immediately she felt eyes descend upon her. Disgusting eyes. Hungry eyes. Clutching out her arms to try to suppress the blossoming array of goosebumps, she pressed onward. Darker this ebony world grew, as the air thickened with unspeakable energies. The whispers in the night grew feverish. Betwixt the trees and over root-laden ground came a thrum. The sound of a drum jostled her brainwaves like the heartbeat of twilight. Her vision blurred but for a twitch of time before she was overwhelmed by an ecstatic warmth. Though her vision quickly plunged into oblivion, her worries drifted away upon a sea of pleasure. It drew along her veins towards her fingertips and pulled back to her quickening heart. Then the world opened before her as her quivering flesh spilled into a clearing. Starlight bathed all in gentle kisses, and her eyes frantically drank it all in. It was ancient. There were no histories written of the when and where she found herself. Life raged about her in wild and abhorrent orgies. Nude figures danced wildly and screamed accursed exultations to the heavens. Monstrous behemoths dripped hissing fat through charred flesh into ravenous bonfires. The flames, fueled by massive logs, seemed not to light the clearing, but tinted all in crimson. It was a world of blood and shadows. Another wave of pleasure reverberated through her, and her body moved, entranced by the drum beat. She danced down to the clearing, down towards the tree there, that massive, impossible thing. Limbs devouring the sky, leaves roaring darkness at the whim of the wind. It had seen aeons pass and civilizations crumble. It was old, gnarled, and refused to die. It was a natural god. She was sure she would have felt a certain sense of reverence towards the tree. If pleasure and fear hadn't distracted her, if it hadn't made her so disassociative. Then she was surrounded by the nude figures. Their faces were masks of lust and divine debauchery. The naked savages tore at her motley, drowning her bells tolling with a revelry. Piece by piece her bare flesh was exposed to the elements. She continued her trek even as the last was torn from her until only hat and slipper remained. With bare flesh, she presented herself before him. Countless eyes watched the exchange, all growing silent until only the crackle of flame broke the void. "Thy pale flesh is as peering into a still pool, little fool," he said. "I may be a fool, but at least I'm not an ass," she replied. His laughter, like an earthquake under an ice floe, filled her. Perhaps malicious, definitely dangerous, painfully attractive. He smiled then, porcelain gleaming from the shadow. "Such a wonderful thing," said he. "Even now, before the savage altar, thy human shows." "Ah, a human sacrifice?" she asked, smiling wryly and putting a hand to her mouth sheepishly. "I fear I'm no virgin." "That is a mere formality. Supple woman flesh is all we require. The initiates are hungry." She glanced around at the menagerie of horror that had surrounded her. Human faces, wrong, blasphemous, and worst of all, ravenous. Spittle frothed through chapped lips and clacking teeth. "Very well, then," she whispered. "Give me your name and a knife." "My name is old. Too old. Thine own is all thou shalt need. The knife already rests in thy palm." Her eyes fell to her small fists, and indeed in hand was a wicked instrument. It was a barbaric tool of flecked black stone. The handle was torn and fashioned from the bone of an unknown corpse, yellowed with time. She nodded. There was no reason to delay. She drew the cruel blade across her throat. Flesh and sinew tore, but pain was absent as the blood gushed from the gaping wound. To her surprise, it felt wonderful. Little flickering waves of warmth and release pulsed from the wound. Her bright eyes glazed and rolled into the back of her skull as orgasmic energy radiated from her open throat. Calloused hands tore into her from all sides, with long and dirty nails, filling her every orifice, every hole suddenly without finesse or restraint. Those that could not find holes made new ones, carving through the flesh at her tender sides. A long, slender blade flashed out from the mob and ran across her small breasts and tore a moan from her as her fat was exposed to the world. Her meager arms were pulled from their sockets and twisted violently, muscle and cartilage snapping. Jagged black teeth tore at the ever-twisting flesh. As she filled their mouths, she let loose a fevered moan. More hands entered her until she was full, completely full. They grabbed, pinched, and scraped as she convulsed and quivered and screamed for more. The depraved pleasure rose to unimaginable heights as her senses failed her and the world dissipated around her. Her mind shattered like glass, and all she knew was vast kaleidoscopic light and sheer ecstasy. Then the hands pulled free, taking everything inside of her out. She felt herself, now purely a spirit of bliss, rise out of the gore and out of existence. Through that fog of orgasms and ages, she heard him. "Beautiful. Beautiful." The jester awoke, and she was soaked.